Hi, I'm Andy Burgess. I'm a product specialist here at Aston Martin. What I'd like to do is take you for a test drive in this beautiful DB11 V12 and take you through some of the controls that you might want to be using when you're driving the car as well. Okay, so in the car, we'll put our foot on the brake, press our start button, pop our belt on. So whenever you start the car, you'll always be in its default setting, which is the GT setting. So that's the GT setting in terms of engine and gearbox and throttle, and also on the suspension side. So we'll grab a gear, so that's foot on the brake, and then we'll press the D button and away we go. So as I've said, we're in our GT mode in both suspension side and engine and gearbox side. So what that's doing in GT is keeping the car relaxed. It's in its quietest mode. So the exhaust valve is shut, the throttle is very relaxed, not too sensitive, and the gearbox is also relaxed. In other words, it's going to put you in the highest gear possible for the speed that you're trying to achieve. Also, when you're in GT mode as well, it has cylinder deactivation. So what that means is it actually cuts the engine from a V12 to a 6-cylinder and alternates between the banks. So that makes the engine much more efficient, which is perfect for when you're doing those sort of GT runs, nice long runs down to the south of France or something like that, where you want maybe economy and want a nice long range on your fuel. So the suspension feels very relaxed. The damper setting is in its softest setting. But it doesn't mean the car is wallowy though, because it's an adaptive system. So what that means is even though we're in GT mode and it's in a soft damper mode, when you go round a corner, it detects load from the steering and also a sensor within the car. It will actually stiffen one side of the car to stop it leaning. Even in GT mode, you'll still feel the car that feels very dynamic. So we're driving along here now, we're at 40 miles an hour, actually in 7th gear, automatic. And what we're going to do is just on the right hand button on the engine and gearbox side of things, is just give it one press and that will bring it to sport, and straight away it's gone from 7th to 6th gear. Also, the throttle has just made it a little bit more sensitive as well, and I can hear that engine note, that beautiful Aston Martin engine note, just that little bit more. So as I start to brake now, straight away you hear that little pop and crackle from it. It drops down to 5th gear, whereas before in GT it didn't do that, it kept you in the higher gear. So we're just coming up to a traffic light now, so we're going to start braking. And again, I'm just hearing that engine just that little bit more. So I'm pulling away from a traffic light now in that sport mode. So it's not too aggressive, but it definitely feels different to GT, just holding on to that gear a little bit more, and I can hear that engine note just that little bit more as well. Suspension is still in GT, so that hasn't altered at all. Steering is exactly the same. The right hand button is purely doing the engine, the gearbox and the throttle. So what we'll do now, we're in sport mode, we're in auto. We're now going to press the button once more, and that will take us into Sport Plus mode. I'm in 4th gear, goes into 5th gear now. So let's press that button into Sport Plus, and straight away it drops to 4th gear. And straight away I hear that engine note even more now. And as soon as I touch the throttle, it's much more responsive. It's holding on to that 4th gear, still in 4th gear. Yeah, and you really hear that engine note. If I start to brake, you hear that pop and the crackle because it's dropped the gear to 4th and then to 3rd. Back on the power a little bit, it's holding on to 3rd gear now, it's not going up to 4th. Now it's 4th. And the car just feels a little bit more lively, and I can definitely hear all that lovely, lovely Aston Martin noise. So Sport Plus is very much the fun setting, if you like. Now if we press it again, it reverts back to its GT. So it'll always scroll through those 3 modes. GT, Sport and Sport Plus. So back in GT now, it's gone up to 8th gear, nice and relaxed, throttle's relaxed, that engine note has now disappeared. GT, so I have cylinder deactivation. It doesn't tell me this, but it's probably gone to 6 cylinders and it's alternating those banks now, making it more efficient. So there's your 3 modes, GT, Sport, Sport Plus. Use them and play around with them, because we're all different what we like out of the car. So there'll be a certain setting that you like, and that's the one that you'll always go to. Also, what you can do, we've been using automatic here, is you can actually use the paddles. Now, I always would like a customer to use the paddles on an Aston Martin, and you want to be in a bit more control as well. So using the paddles gives you that control. It's quite easy to do. All you would do is pull the plus on the paddle, I pull that towards me, and now it's in 6th gear. So the D has disappeared from my display and I just have the number of the gear that I'm in, which is 6. So now I have minus on my left, plus on my right. I'm still in Sport Plus, so I still have that engine and that throttle response. But now the gearbox is down to me. I decide when I want to change gear, on what gear I want to go into. So a little tip for you with paddle shift, if you're not used to paddles, is you can just use the right paddle, the plus paddle. My tip is, if you start to hear that engine noise, just pull the paddle. There's no right or wrong time to pull the paddle. If you come to a stop and you start to slow down, it will come down for you. You don't have to use the left paddle to come down. It's nice to though, because you can play with that engine note. So I'm in 5th gear now, into 4th gear now, and you really hear that pop and crackle from it. Hear that engine note, pull the right one. Easy as that. At the moment, what we've spoken about is the right-hand button, which is done my gearbox, my engine and my throttle. Now we're going to talk about the left-hand button on the steering wheel. What this does is the suspension and the steering. And all the time we've been talking about the engine and gearbox and throttle, it's always been its GT mode, so it's been a very compliant ride. So let's talk about that now. So first of all, if I press the button once, it then goes to Sport. So what it's done now is made the dampers a little bit stiffer. So as I go through this corner here, I can feel the car just feels a little bit sharper. I can just start to feel the road that little bit more, and the steering's gone that little bit more weighted as well. If I press it once more, it goes to the plus setting, so Sport Plus. Now I can really start to feel that damper's gone a little bit stiffer now. And the car is giving me a little bit more confidence in the corner. It's not leaning at all, it's very flat through the corner. But not too aggressive though, it's not too stiff. So don't be afraid to use the Sport Plus button. If you feel like it's too much though, and for the road conditions in front of you, that maybe the road is bumpy, you press it once more and it reverts back to that GT setting. So just like the right hand button, you scroll through those 3 settings. GT, Sport and Sport Plus. So I'm back in GT now, feels more compliant, nice and soft, steering feels a little bit lighter. So I'll press it once more, we're going to Sport, steering gets a little bit more weighted. I can feel the road that little bit more, feels a little bit tighter. Press it once more again, there we go, I can really feel it tighten up now. It starts to give me confidence within the corner. So another nice feature you can use when you've returned from your test drive and you want to park the car is the 360 cameras. So if we press this little button just here at the bottom of the waterfall, brings up the cameras. On the left hand screen you see the 360 view from above, and on the right hand screen you have a choice of different views. So at the moment this view is out the front of the car. So if you want to change that view, you can use your control dial to do this, or you can use your touchpad. I'm going to use the touchpad. So we just put our finger on the touchpad, push it to the top, our view goes up to the top, and then we scroll left and right. So as I do that, you'll notice we can go to this setting, which is the front wheel. If we go to the left again, you've got the rear wheel. This is a really good setting for when you're parking the car. As you can see here, I can put the car right next to this curb and make sure I don't actually hit it. So use that when you're on your test drive as well, when you're coming back to park the car. It's a really good feature that's standard on this DB11. So I hope you enjoyed your drive with the DB11. Don't forget to use these buttons that we showed you on this video. The Sport button on the right, using the gearbox, the throttle and the exhaust, and the suspension button on the left as well, again going through GT, Sport and Sport Plus. And don't be afraid to use those paddles too. This is what it's all about with an Aston Martin, that little bit more control it gives you.